Hello everyone, tonight we're going to follow a fisherman, just one, but not just any fisherman. You're going to spend the next 24 hours in his sandals, standing on the pale sea-washed rock of Malta in the 14th century. You've got salt crusted in your eyebrows, a questionable lunch ahead of you, and if you're lucky, your boat won't be eaten by a leviathan. Picture this. It's the middle of the night, and the wind coming through the shutter cracks smells like old rope and seawater. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress in a low arched limestone room. The ceiling is so close you probably hit your forehead on it more than once. A clay oil lamp flickers faintly in the corner, casting shadows that make your fishing net look like it's crawling across the wall. This isn't a vacation, it's your life. And if you don't get up before the roosters do, someone else is going to beat you to the good spots on the water. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You wake up cold. There's no glass in the windows, just a wooden shutter that rattles in the night wind. Your wool blanket, the itchy one with the weird stain shaped like Sicily, is wrapped around your legs, but your toes are still cold. Outside, the stars are fading, and the sky's that weird kind of gray that makes it hard to tell if it's about to rain or just mess with your schedule. You groan, every bone creaks. You're 29, but you feel like a relic someone might dig up from a Roman ruin. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and immediately regret it. The floor is limestone, of course. Everything in Malta is limestone: the buildings, the streets, the old church walls, even the cooking fire. If limestone could talk, it would mostly complain about feet. There's no fire yet, and the house smells like fish. Not in a poetic ocean breeze kind of way. In a "you spilled sardine brine 3 days ago and never cleaned it properly" kind of way. Your brother Matteo is already awake. You hear him outside, coughing like an old donkey and muttering something about broken oars, probably blaming you again. That's fine. You'll blame him later when the bread is moldy. You throw on your rough linen tunic, it still has sand in it from yesterday, and tighten the rope belt. Your boots are stiff, cracked leather, repaired so many times you're not even sure which part is original. You think the left one may actually be someone else's entirely. Your grandmother is asleep in the corner, curled up under a thin wool shawl. She smells faintly of bay leaves and judgment. You tiptoe past her. She hasn't forgiven you for last week, when you stepped on the blessed palm cross on your way out. You tried to tell her it was an accident. She tried to hit you with a broom. Outside, it's not much warmer. The wind has shifted during the night, and it's blowing in from the north, dry, cold, and smelling faintly of goat. That means the mistral is coming, which could ruin your morning catch, or ruin your boat, or ruin your face. It really depends on how much the saints like you today. You splash your face with water from the cistern. It's rainwater, brackish and cold enough to shock your soul back into your body. You gasp like you've just seen your tax collector in a bathing suit. Across the courtyard, a rooster begins screaming like it's possessed. You glare at it. You've dreamed of stewing that thing at least 7 times this week. The neighbors are already rustling. You hear the clang of buckets, the groan of a donkey, and someone cursing in Italian about a missing sandal. That's the pace of life here, everybody half awake, half grumpy, and mostly barefoot. You wander to the corner of the house where you keep your tools. The fishing spear is missing one tine again, and your knife handle smells suspiciously like garlic and fish guts. You wipe it on your tunic, no one's looking. And then you do something you've done every morning since you were 12. You check the sky. Not with a sailor's instruments, you can't afford those, but with your nose, your bones, and your eyebrows. Today, the sea looks moody. The clouds are dragging their feet across the horizon like they're not sure if they re on duty. You say a little prayer under your breath, not for luck, but for less bad luck. St. Andrew is your usual go-to. He's the patron of fishermen. And also, you suspect, the patron of people who don't want to drown today. Your sister, Giovanna, pops out of the doorway holding your breakfast, 2 olives and a strip of flatbread that looks like it's been judging you for days. You nod thanks and tear into it like a wolf. It's dry, crumbly, and slightly smoked because everything in your kitchen ends up near the fire eventually. Matteo finally shows his face. He's wearing yesterday's tunic again. You tell him he smells like dead crab. He says that's better than smelling like someone who ate the dead crab. Classic morning banter. As you both head down toward the dock, you pass the old chapel. You pause. Just a moment. The candle's still flickering inside, and you mutter a quick line of Latin that's probably more "please help me not die" than anything canonical. But hey, it's the thought that counts. The limestone streets are still slick with dew, and you nearly slip on a snail. Matteo laughs. You consider pushing him into the sea later. And there, at the edge of the harbor, waits your boat. A stubby little lutsu with a square sail and a pair of painted eyes on the front, one of the weirdest Maltese traditions, still going strong. Supposedly, they ward off evil spirits, or maybe just confuse octopuses. No one's really sure. But to you, it's more than a boat. It's survival. It's tradition. It's something your father built and his father before him. And today, like every day, you're going to row it straight into the unknown. The boat creaks as your foot lands on its wooden belly, the familiar sound of old planks groaning beneath your weight. Matteo is already ahead of you, tossing in the coils of netting with all the grace of a drunk goat. You glance down at the shoreline. The limestone ledge where your lutsu rests is still slick with seaweed. One false step and you'd be bathing in last night's tidewater. Again. The sky's just beginning to bleed into a muddy orange, but there's no warmth yet. The sea lies heavy and dark, like something waiting. You sniff the air. It smells like iron and fish and a bit like the donkey's stable uphill thanks inland breeze. Matteo mutters something about his back as he ties down the basket that holds your meager supplies. 2 lumps of barley bread, half a smoked mackerel, a small clay flask of watered wine, and one dubious turnip that's developed a personality over the past 3 days. You look at it sideways. It glares back. The rainwater cistern near the chapel is only half full, so you brought just a single clay jug. You lift the lid and splash some of the water over your hands and face again, mostly out of superstition. The brackish chill hits you square between the eyes. Your teeth chatter. There's no soap, of course. Soap is for noble women and Frenchmen. You scrub with sand when you need to feel fancy. Matteo, still chewing a crust from last night's dinner, glances over. You washing your sins away or just trying to impress the fish? You give him the universal sign for quiet before I heave you overboard. A slow, dramatic hand wave with one raised eyebrow. He grins and keeps chewing. The sun peeks over the edge of the horizon now, spilling light like someone kicked over a pot of melted gold. It hits the sandstone buildings of the harbor, painting them peach and rose, softening their centuries of erosion. You pause a moment to admire it. Then your stomach grumbles loud enough to startle a nearby cat, right? Back to work. You bend to check the nets tangled, salt stiff and heavier than they look. Your fingers are already raw from yesterday, but you haul them in anyway, one knot at a time. The mesh is rough and riddled with old repairs, some stitched with horsehair, others with bits of discarded sailcloth. One repair has a small feather worked into it for luck. Or maybe you just got lazy. You both load the last of the gear nets, fishing spear, gaff hook, and one faded cloak in case the weather turns. The boat's eyes stare back at you silently from the bow, their painted pupils chipped from years of wind and salt. Some say those eyes go back to Phoenician times. Others say it was just an excuse to scare off tourists. Either way, you touch the left one gently for luck. You always do. A faint smell of tar rises from the seams of the hull-fresh repairs, still sticky from yesterday. You hope they hold. The last thing you want is to end up sinking again like last October. Remember that? Yeah, let's not do that again. With a push and a grunt, the boat glides off the stone into the dark velvet of the sea. The waves kiss the hull with that soft, slapping rhythm that tells you the tide's coming in. Good, easier rowing. And a better shot at catching something worth selling. You take up one oar, Matteo the other. Your palms are already sore, but you row anyway, not because you want to. Because you have to. The water this morning is especially clear. So much so that you can see the seaweed gardens swaying beneath the surface like green flags. Somewhere down there are fish, hopefully not just the ugly ones. Farther out, the first hint of a breeze picks up. It smells like salt, resin, and adventure, or possibly just mildew from the sail. You raise it together, the square patchwork canvas puffing out like a belly full of ale. It catches just enough wind to get you gliding across the water, cutting a line through the waking sea. Remember when Thomas tried to row with a broken arm? Matteo says as he ties off the rigging. Look like he was wrestling a sea demon? You chuckle. Tomas always had more guts than sense. That's how he ended up stranded on Camino overnight with only a lantern and a sack of chickpeas. The lantern came back. The chickpeas did not. You pass by a cluster of low rocks jutting out from the water, bird-covered and slippery, the kind sailors give rude nicknames to. On one, a fat cormorant watches you pass with that same judgmental look your grandmother gives the local priest during confession. The sun climbs higher, glinting off the waves like a sea of broken glass. Your arms ache, your back stiffens, and you consider briefly how much better life might be if you'd chosen a career as a monk. But then you remember monks don't get olives or wine. Trade-offs. As the wind picks up, you lean harder into the oar, your body shifting with the rhythm of the waves. The motion is almost hypnotic. Pull, brace, breathe. Pull, brace, breathe. Like a lullaby for your bones, if lullabies also made your shoulders scream, and then it hits. A wall of sea spray, sudden and sharp, smacks you right across the cheek like an angry grandmother's slap. You sputter and cough. Mateo howls with laughter. That's for saying my tunic smells like crab. He shouts, delighted. You grumble and wipe your face with your sleeve, which, spoiler alert, only makes things saltier. The sea has a twisted sense of humor. Ahead, the open water stretches wide and blue, flecked with white caps and mystery. You know these routes, sure, but there's always something new. A drifting log, a suspicious current, a boat that never returned. Stories cling to the sea like barnacles to a hull, and no one truly knows what sleeps below. Historians still debate whether Maltese sailors of the 14th century believed in sea spirits, but considering how many of your neighbors refuse to fish on full moons, you've got your own opinions. Mateo spits over the side, mutters a prayer to St. Elmo, and grabs the tiller. Wind shifting again, he says. Of course it is. You squint into the distance, where the cliffs of Gozo are just barely visible through the morning haze. Somewhere out there, you hope, the fish are waking up and looking for a bad decision. Time to go meet them. You tug at the collar of your tunic, already regretting wearing the heavier one. The sun hasn't even fully risen, but you can feel it starting to cook your shoulders. That's Malta for you, one minute, furnace the next. Your stomach gurgles a little, reminding you that the only thing in it is half a stale olive and a gulp of lukewarm water. Mateo's munching loudly on the rest of the bread, offering you a bite with a grin and exactly zero intention of sharing it. Before you do anything else, it's time for the thing you never skip, even if you're late, seasick, or on fire. You pray. You've been known to nap during Mass, and once mistook a bishop's hat for a fish basket. But the sea is different. Came from your father, who said it came from his. No one knows exactly what it is, but no one dares throw it away. It's not glamorous. In fact, it's mostly mush-crushed sardines, rotted bread soaked in anchovy oil, and a few handfuls of herbs meant to disguise the worst of the smell. Somewhere up there, people are still asleep in warm beds. You try not to hate them. It doesn't work. It smells like something that died, then got embarrassed about it and tried again. Everyone's keeping to their own patch of water. That's the unspoken rule. They nod back, which is basically a declaration of undying friendship in fisherman terms. You don't approach someone else's spot unless you enjoy getting your sail sliced or your nets mysteriously filled with goat dung. That's how curses happen. Or really, how your grandmother yells for an hour and then refuses to make soup for a week. Mateo helps you anchor the ends one to a stone, the other to a makeshift float made from a dry gourd. Mateo is already snoring quietly, his head tilted back and his mouth wide open. You consider dropping a small crab in there just to keep him humble. Gulls cry overhead, their voices sharp and dramatic, like they're arguing over who gets to poop on which boat. A small jellyfish floats past, pulsing like a tiny ghost, utterly unbothered by the state of the world. It's heavy, heavier than expected, and you start imagining treasures. A dead crab with one leg doing the backstroke. And then a slipper, not yours, not Mateo's, not anyone you know. It's disturbingly small, maybe a whole school of bream, maybe a rare tuna. Maybe more seaweed, more empty shellfish, and then finally a good one. A sea bream, fat and glistening, flopping madly in the bottom of the boat. You pounce on it like a starving cat and club it clean with a stick. Not elegant, but effective. You watch it drift for a while, hypnotized by the gentle tug of the current. It's hungry, and everyone who's lived long enough knows that something out there takes more than it gives. and makes a complicated gesture that might be an ancient Phoenician blessing or just something he saw in a tavern once. Fish are smarter than they look, but hunger makes even the clever ones reckless. So you mumble a few lines to St. Andrew, tap the small wooden cross tied to the mast. Time loses its shape like it always does on the sea. Your hands bleed in familiar places. Your shoulders burn. The sea always watches. It remembers, but the boat floats. The fish nibble. Life, in its own strange rhythm, continues. And then, just for good measure, you give the idol under the bench a quick glance. It tastes like history. Specifically Roman-era foot history. Or if those were just convenient explanations for their wives when they came home late and empty-handed. You, personally, don't need a historian to tell you the ocean has teeth. Now, you're not the most devout man, not exactly. It's a little carved thing shaped like a bird or a fish or maybe both. Matteo, for his part, does his usual ritual. He licks his thumb, touches the mast. Better safe than eaten. He mutters, squinting at the horizon. He's not wrong. The sail flutters as the wind shifts. You take that as your cue and start prepping the bait. You slap the mess into a ragged burlap pouch and toss it overboard, tied to a stone and floating just beneath the surface. You glance back at the coastline. It's already fading into a line of pink cliffs and boxy, sun-bleached homes. A few more boats drift nearby other fishermen, all pretending not to look at each other. You nod to a passing boat crewed by two old brothers with matching eyebrows and matching scowls. Then it's time to drop the net. You haul the heavy coil over the side. It splashes down, unfolding in slow motion beneath the surface like a drowning spider. Now comes the worst part. Waiting, you sit on a bucket, the sun rising behind you like a smug egg, and try not to fall asleep. Instead, you pull out the last of your provisions, a hard olive and a piece of cheese that has achieved sentience, and chew slowly. The sea rocks you gently. And then, suddenly, the line jerks. You jump up, Matteo lurches awake and almost falls overboard, and both of you scramble to pull in the net. Maybe a bunch of rocks. Because that's exactly what comes up first, rocks, seaweed. Maybe it's cursed, Matteo says. You toss it back with more force than necessary. Still, there's hope. You keep pulling. Praise be, you mutter, dropping it into the bucket. It twitches once. Victory. Two more fish follow a mullet and a small octopus, the latter of which immediately inks all over your arm in protest. You curse. Matteo laughs. You look like you lost a fight with a squid, he says. You hold up your arm. I did. The net goes back in. The sun climbs higher. You glance once more at the horizon. Nothing but water and sky. And yet, you can't help but feel like something's watching. Historians still debate whether Maltese fishermen of the 14th century carried charms for protection against sea monsters. You settle in again, eyes scanning the water for another tug, another sign. Another moment when the deep decides what you get to eat today. And somewhere beneath your feet, something stirs. There's a rhythm to rowing, pull, breathe, shift, pull. And after a while, it's not so much work as it is a trance. Your arms ache, sure, but it's the kind of ache you've outlived with so long it almost feels like family. But it's yours. Painted bright, with the twin eyes of Osiris staring boldly from the bow. Most locals call them Ulkanj Talutsu, old habit. You don't even think about them anymore. The kind of wind that doesn't seem to come from anywhere, like it's thinking about whether or not to ruin your afternoon. You adjust the sail again, just slightly, and pretend you didn't just hear the mast creak in that particular old joint way. You just touch them before every trip like your father did. One swoops low, tries to grab something from your net, and misses spectacularly. You guide the rudder gently, adjusting your path as you move closer to the deeper reef edge. Somewhere beneath you, fish dart between shadowy ledges, hiding from predators or from you. Matteo applauds sarcastically. 10 out of 10 dive, 0 out of 10 form. He found an island that wasn't on any map, full of gold and strange birds. You pull them in to check wet, tangled, heavy. You shake loose a bit of seaweed and a tiny crab that immediately tries to attack your thumb. Brave little thing. You flick it back into the sea before Matteo sees and starts talking about omens again. When he came back, his hair was white, and he couldn't remember how long he'd been gone. You used to laugh at it. Then he starts humming a sailor's song that involves a goat, a barmaid, and something legally vague about a barrel of anchovies. It unfurls in the air like a wet spider web, flattens out, then sinks in a slow, eerie silence. Just the creak of wood and the distant call of a bird you can't see. You watch it go, hoping, praying not for riches, but maybe just enough to trade for vinegar wine and a wedge of half-decent cheese. Now you're not so sure. You squint under your hood and mutter a half-hearted curse. You've got fish scales stuck to your arm, your boots are soggy from the last splash, and your net is starting to smell like regret. He sniffs it, shrugs, and bites in. It crunches in the most aggressive way possible. Still edible, he says, spraying a few crumbs onto your sleeve. Barely. Your boat lifts slightly, the mast groaning like an old monk with bad knees. Matteo scrambles to drop the sail just enough to reduce strain. The wind picks up a little more, but not dangerously. Not yet. Some say they're leftovers from the Phoenicians. Others say they're just superstition with a paintbrush. Either way, the boat hasn't sunk, yet. Hopefully, you reach for the tarpet stashed near the base of the mast and smear a line of pitch across one of the worst seams. The smell hits instantly, burnt pine and sea rot. You hate it, you love it. It's the smell of maintenance and survival. Like that cousin who always borrows your tools and never brings them back, annoying but familiar. The sea surface ripples gently now. The breeze is steady, not too eager, just enough to make your sail puff out like a lazy baker's apron. You loosen the ropes a little and shift your weight, letting the Lutsu drift to the west where you know the deeper waters hide. Just a flicker in the air, a tension like the sea is testing you, seeing if you're paying attention. That's where the better catch is, if luck's on your side. Let's not go too far, he mutters, shielding his eyes from the sun. Winds being shifty. If you take a moment to admire your boat. It's a bit lopsided, a little scarred, and smells like wet rope and mackerel. Matteo stretches beside you, looking like a man who's worked just hard enough to justify a nap. You nod. You've noticed it too. One moment you're sunburned, the next you're soaking and cursing Neptune's left sandal. A few seabirds wheel overhead, shrieking like they've got opinions. The bird screams in protest, poops in your general direction, and flies off. You squint at the horizon. A few clouds gathering out there, nothing major yet. But the sky over Malta can change faster than your uncle changes wives. Still, the wind holds for now. The sail flutters, then settles. There's a story your grandfather used to tell. About a fisherman who sailed too far out one morning. The nets are almost ready for another toss. The rope on the starboard side is fraying, so you tie a quick knot, not elegant, but it'll hold. Matteo digs into the basket again and pulls out what might be the same turnip from yesterday. You sigh and wipe it off with a rag that hasn't been cleaned since the Crusades. Remind me why I bring you? I'm good company, he says. The sun is climbing now and the sea has turned into a blinding sheet of liquid fire. Still, you keep going. Because that's what you do. You toss the net again, farther this time. The boat drifts quietly now. For a moment the sea is calm, eerily so. Not a wave, not a sound. You shift uneasily. Too quiet, Matteo mutters, echoing your thoughts. Like the sea's holding its breath. Maybe it's trying to decide if it likes us, you reply. He smirks. With your face, we're doomed. You're about to toss a coil of rope at him when the sail jerks just once. A twitch. Not much, but enough. The wind shifts. Again. This time harder. A gust from the northwest, sharp and sudden. You're up instantly, grabbing the tiller, adjusting the line. Still, it's a warning. You both glance toward the cliffs farther away than they should be. The wind's been pushing you, gently, quietly, almost like it was leading you somewhere. You study the rudder and glance back at the nets, almost time to haul them in again. There's no storm yet, no signs of danger. Matteo leans against the mast and says nothing for once. And beneath you, deep and unseen, something massive brushes the net. You freeze, just for a second. Long enough for your mind to race through the possibilities. Shark, tuna, sea monster, floating log, or if luck's on your side, a particularly plump group of mullets. He just looks at you, and you both share the kind of eye contact fishermen only make when one of them is debating whether to say, "I told you not to come this far." But that tug wasn't normal. It didn't feel like a fish struggling. It felt like something huge and slow and curious. Like the sea decided to poke you back. Matteo doesn't say anything. All that's left is seaweed, one confused-looking eel. And the biggest clump of barnacle-encrusted junk you've ever pulled up, another tug. The net tightens, dragging slightly to starboard. It's heavy, maybe a piece of carved wood or coral, but covered in decades, maybe centuries of marine gunk. Shells cling to it. There's a long crack running down one side, revealing something greenish and metallic inside. You grab the line, hands bracing, boots slipping just enough to remind you reach standing on a wet piece of wood above a bottomless mystery. "Help me," you grunt. Not human, not really. Elongated. Fish-like. A crown of fins carved into the head. The ice, stone, or metal are hollow, sunken sockets, and the mouth is stretched open in an eternal silent scream. Every once in a while, someone finds a carving or trinket washed up after a storm. If it's valuable, we should keep it. Just don't let Nona see it. The order takes them. They say it's for safekeeping. But people whisper that some are never seen again. Mateo's beside you in an instant. The two of you begin hauling, hand over hand, the rope cutting grooves into your palms. The net fights back, jerking in off rhythms, too slow for fish, too strong for comfort. The breeze turns a little sharper, whipping your hair around and tugging at the sail. You brace against it, squinting toward the east where the light's too bright for this hour. You try not to think about how cold the thing felt, or how your fingertips still tingle. Like it was buried for a reason. "Please, sir, don't eat me. I've got 7 children in a retirement shell. Not a big one, at least not yet, but a squall maybe. Enough to make the ride home a memorable one." And then, with a slurp and a heave, the net breaches the surface, and whatever it was, it's gone. You blink. Mateo blinks. The eel blinks, then slithers off the side with an audible nope. You pull the thing aboard with a grunt. The wind rattles the sail, and the waves slap gently at the hull. You start coiling the rope again, fingers moving automatically, your eyes drifting back to the bundle beneath the bench. Mateo pokes it with the tip of the gaff hook. Looks like a statue? You both jump up and start adjusting lines, yanking ropes, tying things down. The wind has teeth now. Small ones, but sharp. Gray thick, moving too fast. The Mistral is waking up. That northwesterly demon of a wind, famous for ruining good days and flipping small boats like pancakes. You've been caught in it before, once. You don't want a sequel. It bites your ears, claws at your tunic, pulls at the oars like it wants to dance. You've heard stories of boats that brought up strange things, then sank. Fishermen who dreamed of the deep and walked into the sea one morning like it was their living room. Not that you believe all of it, but enough of it sticks in your head to keep your dreams restless. Every knot of rope pulls tighter. Every plank creaks like it's debating early retirement. The two of you work quickly, like you always do when the sea stops playing nice. It lets out a cheerful puff of spray, does a lazy roll, and dives back down. Your arms remember the motions even when your brain is still catching up. This one's better full of small silvery fish, a few fat breams, and one unfortunate crab missing a leg. Your arms ache, but it's the good kind of pain. The kind that says you'll eat well tonight. Maybe even have something left to trade. But they don't usually come this close when there's a storm coming, unless they're running from something. You don't know why, but you don't like leaving it alone. You crouch, wiping slime away. A face stares back at you. "Pleasant," Mateo mutters. You can't stop staring at it. There's something about it ancient, yes, but something else. Like it doesn't want to be seen. Could be Phoenician, you say finally, or older. Historians still debate whether Malta was part of an ancient maritime cult, something pre-Roman. Possibly Carthaginian that worshipped sea gods forgotten by time. Mateo shakes his head. You wrap the idol in a bit of sailcloth and tuck it under the bench. Back to the sea. The wind is shifting again and not in your favor. "Storm's building," Mateo says low. You nod. You start pulling up the second net, slower this time, more focused. "Not bad," Mateo says, sorting the catch. "Could have been worse." He holds up a fish and makes it talk. You snort. "That's the worst fish impression I've ever heard. Better than your singing." Touché. You both sit for a moment, catching your breath. "Think it's cursed?" You ask. "Everything's cursed," Mateo replies. "Especially that cheese we had last week." You both chuckle, but there's a little edge to it. Another gust of wind rips across the deck. This one's stronger. It slaps the sail hard enough to make the boat lean. You curse under your breath, the rope slipping through your hands. Far off to the north, clouds are gathering like bad omens. Let's not wait around, you say? Matteo nods, already lowering the sail. You check the idol again, still wrapped, still there. The boat turns slowly as you set your course home. The wind fights you now. And then, as if to mock your tension, a dolphin surfaces nearby. You and Matteo stare at each other. That doesn't feel like a good sign, he says. No, you reply. It really doesn't. Because dolphins are curious. Sure, playful, smart. You adjust the rudder. Home is still a long way off. The sail's only halfway up when the next gust hits louder this time, with that odd howling edge that makes it sound like something alive just screamed over the water. You duck your head and curse under your breath. Matteo does the same, except his is louder, the kind that barrels down from the Rhone Valley and slaps the central Mediterranean like it owes it money, and involves several saints, a donkey, and possibly your mother's soup. The boat lurches slightly to the right, and the ropes holding the sail strain with a groan that's far too dramatic for this early in the day. You've gone farther out than usual chasing that first good catch. Probably too far. You remember that thing in the water, the statue, the weird gusts. You were starting to think you should listen to your grandmother's bones when she said, "Don't fish today." You've both been at sea long enough to recognize the signs. This isn't a lazy afternoon breeze anymore. This is the Mistral. The real one. Matteo yells something, but the wind eats it. You pull tighter on the tiller, the rudder fighting back like it resents your leadership. You glance behind you toward shore. It's there somewhere, blurred now by sea spray and morning haze. You know it well, rocky, shallow, annoying during low tide. But it's better than being dragged out towards Sicily by a playful Mistral. Her bones, not her. She checks her joints for omens. Welcome to Malta. You lean into the rudder harder, squinting past the spray. The waves are getting taller, choppier. Salt stings your eyes, gets in your nose, your mouth. Everything tastes like the inside of a pickled fish jar, which coincidentally was your lunch last Tuesday. If the wind turns again, we'll be swimming. Nothing deadly yet, but it's like the sea stretching, warming up for something. It sings through the ropes like it's tuning up for a stormy concert. You glance at Matteo, he's pale now, eyes darting back to the coast. You both know what's out there. Jagged rocks, narrow channels, and more than one sunken boat you've whispered prayers over. The sail snaps and flaps wildly before Matteo finally manages to reef it, tying it down and reducing your wind catch just enough to keep control. You shout to Matteo, drop the sail a notch, and he scrambles forward, yanking at the ropes. You look to the sky, still gray and restless, but not furious. You look at the water, still choppy, but not trying to murder you anymore. You're not far from shore, but far enough that the undertow could pull you under in seconds. And even if it doesn't, the rocks will greet your skull like an overenthusiastic cousin. Matteo wrings out his sleeve, muttering something about cursed fish gods and going back to net mending. He pulls off one boot and pours out a suspicious crab. Of course they stick. The boat jerks again as another wave slams into the side, soaking both of you to the bone. Your tunic clings like seaweed. You spit water and glare at the heavens. The pressure on the sail eases. The creaking lessens. The waves lose their rhythm, flattening into something more like ... exhaustion. Just drifting, silent. Said it followed him all the way to the reef, then vanished when he blinked. The sea has stories, you've heard plenty. And after the last hour, you're not sure you'd bet against any of them. Matteo fights it, loses his footing, and lands flat on his back with a grunt that probably rearranges a rib or two. You would laugh if you weren't actively trying not to die. Of course they do. The wind yanks at the square sail like a spoiled child trying to take its toy back. You steer carefully toward the reefside cove, glad for every minute of calm. You're leaning toward divine punishment that's also just mean-spirited wind. You're pulling hard now, working the rudder to point the boat's nose south-southeast, angling toward the natural cove below the cliffs. You think that statue had something to do with it? Remind me again, Matteo pants, hauling himself upright, why we didn't just become candle makers. Because candles don't buy bread, you shout back, and neither do you. He flips you a hand gesture that may or may not be sacrilegious. The boat tips slightly, waves slapping higher now. You grip the edge of the boat as it shudders again, the Mistral finding its full voice, now sharp, moaning, and fast. But it's still chaos. The tiller bucks under your grip, the rudder dragging hard against the current. Hold her steady, he shouts, grabbing an oar to help you steer. Swimming, by the way, is a terrible option, so you focus. You grip the rudder harder, legs braced, back burning. And then just as suddenly as it started, it shifts. The wind doesn't stop exactly, it swerves. It turns inland, almost uncertain, curling around like it's changed its mind. You and Matteo just stare at each other, panting, soaked, speechless. Is it done? He finally asks. You don't answer right away. Maybe you mutter. Maybe we scared it off. He snorts, or maybe it's just laughing while we dry off. You reach down, touching the idol under the bench. It's still cold, still wrapped, still unnerving. You sit back, heart hammering like a drum in a crowded festa. The boat drifts now, calmer. The Mistral still rumbles off in the distance like thunder from a distant tavern fight. You re glad you left early. And just as you're about to breathe easy, Matteo says, "Hey, you ever hear about old Tomas, when he got caught out here?" You groan. Yes, multiple times. No, I mean the third time. Oh heavens, he grins. Swore he saw a ghost ship. Black sails, no crew. Did he blink before or after drinking a barrel of wine? Unclear. You both laugh, but there's something hollow in it. Historians still debate whether the Mistral was considered divine punishment or just unfortunate weather. The sail dries slowly under the sun's hesitant return. As you settle back, the boat creaking gently beneath you, Matteo raises a brow. You stare ahead, not answering. But you're definitely not touching it again today. By the time you spot the mouth of the reef cove, your hands are blistered, your shoulders feel like you've been headbutting oxen, and your patience with the sea has worn thin enough to see through. The cove's not exactly friendly, but it's better than staying out here with ghosts, gods, and possibly sentient wind. Matteo's quiet now, which is worrying because he's only quiet when he's thinking too much or trying not to throw up. The cliffs rise slowly in the distance now, comforting in their stillness, unlike the water, which has spent the last 2 hours impersonating a drunk goat on stilts. You angle the rudder and start guiding the boat toward the jagged inlet. Smell that? He mutters finally. You sniff. Salt fish in your feet. No, not that. He sniffs again, frowning. Something burnt. You pause, then lift the edge of the sailcloth wrapping this strange idol. No flame. No smoke, just a heat mark right where the statue's been sitting. Deep, with curses and salt and maybe a chicken. The wooden bench beneath it is slightly blackened like something scorched it gently. You drop the cloth back down. Nope, you mutter. We're not doing this today. Matteo holds up a hand. We leave it on shore. We dig a hole. Where are we going to get a chicken? The rock is warm underfoot, the sun having returned like nothing ever happened. The Mistral's voice has faded to a whisper, muttering somewhere far to the north, like a disappointed parent. The cove is small, flanked by jagged limestone teeth. Matteo does the same, and for a moment, both of you just breathe. You've brought the boat in here before usually to wait out rainstorms or hide from particularly grumpy tax collectors. It's tight but manageable. Your cousin's got chickens. I'd rather chew a rope knot. My cousin hates us. Exactly. She assumed we're cursed and throw one at us. Problem solved. But it's not staying in your lutsu overnight. No way, you'd rather invite a wild goat aboard. You shake your head and concentrate on the rocks ahead. It takes time and your nails hate you for it, but eventually you have a pit deep enough to hide a troubling fish god statue, a mildly guilty conscience, and a childhood full of ghost stories. As you drift in, the water beneath you goes from dark navy to pale turquoise. The seabed suddenly visible white sand, scattered pebbles. Matteo follows, holding a stick like he's expecting the statue to bite him, and the occasional darting fish that seems as startled as you are to find itself here. You drop the sail and let the momentum carry you the rest of the way. Matteo hops onto the flat rock ledge with a practiced leap, tying the boat off to a rusted iron ring hammered into the stone years ago by someone we pretty sure died falling off a cliff. Then you both bury it. You jump down after him, boots slipping slightly on the mossy surface. Matteo finishes the mackerel with the kind of energy that suggests emotional trauma can be cured with salted fish. You stretch, your back popping in at least 3 places. Still better than the well-water back in the village. That stuff tastes like disappointment and rust. You're safe. Still better than that time we caught nothing but jellyfish. Mostly, want to eat now? He asks, already pulling out the mackerel and turnip combo. And once in a while, it tries to drop cursed artifacts into your lap like an overenthusiastic museum curator with boundary issues. You grimace. Suit yourself. You've always thought of it more like a moody aunt, sometimes generous, sometimes terrifying and always ready to slap you if you get cocky. The waves at the mouth of the cove are gentler, more forgiving. You could head back soon, unload the catch, maybe trade for fresh bread and a bit of oil. The kind of deep, full breath that only comes after chaos, after uncertainty, after something ancient brushes your net and decides to let you go. He takes a bite, chews with commitment, and mutters something that sounds like, tastes like sadness. You glance back at the boat, at the cloth-wrapped shape beneath the bench. You don't want to touch it again. You really don't. So you retrieve it carefully and carry it up the slope of the cove, past the sun-bleached bones of a long-dead rowboat and into the low brush that clings to the rocky soil. Here? He asks. You nod. You dig with your hands, scraping away at the dry dirt and pebbles. You drop it in. Matteo sprinkles salt over it, muttering an invented prayer that might involve Saint Anthony and 3 different pasta dishes. Done. Silence. And then nothing happens. No lightning, no ghostly wails, no sudden eruption of tentacles. You both exhale at the same time. Let's never speak of this again, Matteo says. Agreed. The two of you trudge back down to the boat. You sit on the edge, boots dangling over the water. You sip the last of the watered wine, warm now and vaguely vinegary. The sun climbs higher. The sea sparkles again, as if trying to apologize for the earlier chaos. A gentle breeze lifts the edge of your sleeve. Think we lost half the catch, you say. Matteo shrugs. You mean the jellyfish caught us? He snorts. I still have a scar. You both laugh because sometimes that's all you can do. The sea takes, the sea gives. Historians still debate whether 14th-century Maltese fishermen saw the sea as a gift or a punishment. You check the sky. Clear. The cliffs are golden now in the full sunlight. You could even nap. The thought is dangerously tempting. But instead, you lean back on the edge of the boat, sun warming your salt-crusted face, and let yourself breathe. Just for today. The nap never happens. You're halfway to slipping into a blissful half-dose sun on your cheeks. The lull of waves echoing in your ears, Matteo muttering about whether ghosts need shoes, when a familiar voice cuts through the air like a cracked bell. Oi! You girls done sunbathing yet? You lift your head, blinking into the glare. There, perched precariously on the edge of the cliff like a smug seagull, stands Dragoo, your cousin. Shirtless, barefoot, and grinning like someone who's just seen you fall into a latrine. I was expecting you two back by mid-morning. Bringer of bad ideas. His beard has somehow gotten bigger since the last time you saw him, and it's entirely possible there's a bird living in it. Didn't take her 3 hours to get out of it. Jorgu. Builder of boats, you're late, he shouts. Split clean like an almond shell. You raise a hand. Got caught in the mistral. So did my grandmother's skirt, he says. Anything's better than sitting here worrying about whether you've offended an ancient sea deity. Someone's playing a flute badly. It's home. Planks lean in every direction. Ropes dangle like vines. There's a wheelbarrow full of nails, not in a box. Just nails, loose. Plus, you've owed Jorgu a visit since he patched your rudder last month and refused to take payment except in anchovies. You still feel guilty. Matteo waves lazily, muttering, Tell your grandmother to stop chasing fishermen. You see the crack right away, a long dramatic splinter that cuts through the keel like a lightning bolt. You and Matteo clamber up the familiar goat path carved into the limestone, boots slipping on loose gravel and scrub. Jorgu laughs. Come on, you've got to see this. Broke the keelboard on that new lutsu I was carving. Your legs are jelly. Your back is an old creaking door, which means dragging it all the way from the ridge. And you know how my donkey feels about trees. But the smell of the village hits you as you crest the hill rosemary bush, olive smoke, goats, and that faint whiff of hot stone that only makes sense if you've lived here. Matteo groans. I swear if he makes us carry lumber, you win with a fish that swallowed Malta. No wind, no weird artifacts, no ghosts. Just sun, sawdust, and splinters in inconvenient places. A place you rarely go, a place locals avoid. Steep, sharp, shaded even at midday. We're going, you say, hopping up and brushing off your tunic. A light that shines under the waves some nights. An old hermit who talked to the sea and died smiling. The Order of St. John sometimes sends patrols out there, claiming it's to inspect erosion. Locals suspect it's because something's buried. Or wakes up. You spot your lutsu in the cove, gently swaying like it's asleep. Matteo is arguing that wheels are a bad invention. Again, for a moment, it's easy to forget everything else. The way the sea moved, the sudden gusts, the silence after. You stash the net and cover the catch with a damp cloth. The boat is anchored well enough. The climb is a rude awakening. Every part of you that thought about resting is now screaming in protest. The cluster of homes ahead is small, maybe a dozen stone buildings with flat roofs and clay pots balanced in impossible places. The chickens are out. The goats are arguing. Georgiou's workshop is just outside the main cluster, half shelter, half chaos. Inside the shaded area, the half-finished lutsu rests like a sleeping beast, its hull already painted in bright ochre and blue. Georgiou crouches beside it, inspecting the damage like it insulted his mother. You hit it with a hammer again, didn't you? You ask. It insulted my craftsmanship, he mutters. I retaliated, Matteo whistles. That'll need a new board, Georgiou sighs. Which means a new tree. Emotionally or logistically? Both. You laugh, and for the first time all day, it feels normal. You help Georgiou haul the broken keel aside. The three of you argue briefly about whether the crack looks like Malta, a fish, or Matteo's ex-girlfriend. While Georgiou rants about wood grain and saints who clearly don't care about boat building, you slip away for a moment, wandering toward the edge of the slope that overlooks the sea. From here, it's beautiful blue stretching to infinity, broken only by the bobbing dots of boats and the hazy line of the distant island of Gozo. But then your eyes drift toward the cliffs to the east. There are stories, of course, always are. A woman who walked into a cave and never returned. Historians still debate whether these stories have roots in actual historical events, lost settlements, ancient rituals, vanished monks. You shiver despite the heat. Back in the workshop, Georgiou has found a wheelbarrow and is loading it with absurd enthusiasm. Hey, Georgiou calls. You still planning to head back before evening? You nod, though a part of you isn't so sure. Something about today's current felt off. Georgiou squints. You look like someone just told you your boat learned how to talk. You shrug, just tired. He nods, but you can tell he doesn't buy it. Be careful out there, he says finally. Sea's been strange lately. You pause. You felt it too? He scratches his beard. Not me. The wood. Doesn't lie. Been splitting weird. Like it doesn't want to float anymore. You don't know how to respond to that, so you don't. You help load the new board. Accept half a loaf of bread from Georgiou's mother and begin the walk back to the cove. Matteo, chewing loudly, says, You think we should have burned that statue instead? You glance back at the cliffs. I think it's not done with us yet. The return path down to the cove feels different. You've walked it hundreds of times, boots kicking loose stones, the sun warm on your back, the sea waiting like an old friend. But today, every step feels like a question you haven't figured out how to answer. The birds are quieter. The wind doesn't rustle the shrubs like it usually does. Even the goats have shut up. That's when you really know something's off. Those goats never stop complaining. Matteo trudges behind you, dragging the new keel board like it's a dead relative he didn't like. He grumbles about splinters, slope angles, and the tragic absence of wheels in this part of the world. Occasionally, he pauses to gesture wildly with a crust of bread. The boat looks unchanged, tied up, bobbing gently, pretending to be innocent. But you know better. You think we'll even make it back to shore before dark? He says. You glance at the sun. Still high, but not for long. And the wind has that strange weight again, like it's building up courage. If we hurry, you mutter. Matteo takes a long look at the sea and mutters something about soup weather and bad omens under his breath. By the time you reach the cove, your shirt is damp with sweat and the soles of your boots feel like they've been chewed on by devils. All right, if it curses us, I'm blaming you. And I'm haunting you after I drown. You both stop at the cliff's edge, just above the buried idol. Matteo mutters, Still there. You nod. Still buried. The village appears again, that familiar cluster of stone and smoke. You could almost pretend today never happened, for now. You both stand there for a second too long, not talking. Just listening, but the wind says nothing. The waves say nothing. Then Matteo lets out an exaggerated sigh. Too quiet for a current. Just that slow, silent rise and fall, like something massive gliding beneath you. Noted? There's no immediate rush, but you both rather not be caught out after dusk. Not today. Not after everything. The wind is light, gentle, a little too gentle, like it's playing dumb. You untie the lutsu, check the net, and secure the new keel board under the middle bench. The water is still calm. That's the worst part. No thrashing. No splash, just that feeling of something huge, unseen, and not in a hurry. You push off with the oar. The boat drifts slowly from the cove, back into open water. Matteo moves to the opposite side of the boat, eyes locked on the water. Neither of you speak for a while. For the first half hour, things are almost normal. The boat turns again, unprompted. You sail in silence, Matteo occasionally adjusting the sail or making the kind of noises men make when they're hungry, tired and annoyed with the sky. Almost. But the feeling remains like you're not alone. Like the waves are watching. But if it swims after us, I'm throwing the net at it and running inland. Because then just as you're crossing the deeper channel, a dark shape moves under the boat. You both feel it. The hull lifts slightly, then dips. It's too smooth to be a wave, older, and if I die, I hope it chokes on me. The area around Malta, especially between the islands, is dotted with tailies of sea demons, drowned temples, and boats that vanish only to wash ashore months later with no crew and barnacles on the inside of the hull. You freeze. Matteo whispers, "You saw that, right?" You nod. Definitely not a tuna. The sail flutters once. The rudder jerks in your hand, not hard, but just enough to make your heartbeat punch the back of your throat. You grip the rudder tighter and steer slightly starboard, away from where the shape moved. The catch is pulled up, sorted quickly, and carried to the smokehouse with none of the usual complaints. Matteo doesn't sing. You don't make jokes. And then, out of nowhere, another breeze. Different from the Mistral, warmer, coming from the east. You both turn your heads because that shouldn't be happening. That's not normal, Matteo mutters. All right. But if the fish start talking, I'm moving inland forever. Nothing about today has been normal. The sail adjusts itself slightly, catching the warm gust. Matteo lowers his voice to a near whisper. We didn't bury it deep enough. You shoot him a look. We're not digging it back up. Good, because I wasn't planning to. You can't run inland on a boat. Then I'll swim inland. You both fall silent again, eyes scanning the sea. Nothing moves. Historians still debate whether certain stretches of Mediterranean water have always been considered sacred or cursed. You never believed those stories much. Until now, the village grows closer. The cliffs rise around you. You're nearly home. And that's when you hear it. A sound beneath the water. Faint. A sort of low, drawn-out moan. Almost like a wail, but deeper. Sadder, Matteo hears it too. His eyes are wide now, and his hands are clenched so tight on the oar that his knuckles look like marble. Neither of you says anything. Because what would you say? The sound fades slowly, and the boat keeps sailing. No more wind. No more strange movement. Just calm water and a nervous pair of men pretending nothing's wrong. You dock the lute-shoe in silence. The ropes are tied with extra care. As the sun begins to set, casting gold across the sea, you both sit near the seawall, chewing dry bread and staring out toward the horizon. Eventually, Matteo speaks. So, we just pretend today didn't happen? You nod, like always. He sighs. You smirk. You won't. You'd miss the sea. He doesn't answer right away. Then, softly, yeah, that's the problem. Evening brings the village back to life. You think after a near-death wind chase, a possible sea demon sighting, and a cursed artifact burial, things might settle down. But no, the minute you step into the square, someone's goat has escaped, the baker is yelling about missing flour. All you want is a bowl of soup, a place to sit, and maybe half an hour where the sea doesn't whisper existential riddles at you. And children are pelting each other with figs of highly questionable freshness. Your shirt is still damp, your feet ache, and you've got sea salt crusting behind your ears. But Nona sees you before you can sneak past. Hey, you're late. You freeze. Slowly turn. There she's barefoot, apron on, wooden spoon in hand like a weapon forged in the fires of maternal guilt. Her gray hair is wrapped in a scarf that's older than the village itself, and her expression says, I don't care if you were eaten by Poseidon, you're not skipping dinner. Matteo wisely vanishes. He's halfway to the alley before you even open your mouth. Nona grabs your ear not hard, just enough to remind you who raised you. Wind or no wind, you missed the chickpea stew. I nearly drowned. You also nearly missed fresh bread. The sea doesn't get angry for no reason. There's a bowl already waiting, steam curling into the dim air. She hands you a spoon like it's a peace offering. She drags you inside. It smells like garlic, oil, and judgment. You sit at the heavy wooden table. Slowly at first, then with the ravenous energy of someone who stared into the abyss and came back craving legumes. She glances at you, then at the empty bowl. You eat. Deep and tired, like someone who's cleaned up too many cosmic messes. Did you bury it? Nona sits opposite, knitting something that might be a sock or might be a tiny fishing net. So she says, What did you find out there? You pause, spoon halfway to your mouth. What do you mean? She shrugs. You stare at her. How do you know it was angry? The wind came from the north and the east at the same time, she says simply. Only happens when something wakes up. Like when she said not to whistle at night or Donna leave olive oil open near a window. The sea beyond the wall is dark now, smooth as stone. Nothing stirs, no strange winds. No glowing eyes. Just the normal sounds, waves, insects, a donkey yelling at nothing in particular. Things live in the wind. She'd always say things with long memories and short tempers. You set the spoon down slowly. Conversation over. You are not sure if she's protecting you or just doesn't want you to get ideas. Either way, she's already humming a hymn under her breath as she rinses your bowl. You saw it? She asks. You nod. You touched it? You know, he says after a moment, if we ever tell anyone about that statue, they'll think we're insane. You hesitate. Wrapped it in sailcloth. She sighs. Yes. Good. She knits 2 more rows, then says, should have burned it? Faint, rhythmic, slow. Not a party, not a dance. A warning rhythm. Someone on the watchtower spotted something. You head toward the edge of the wall where the lookouts usually gather. A small crowd has already formed, men squinting into the dark. Women whispering behind their hands. A boy clutching a slingshot like it's going to help. I thought you said the sea was angry. She gives you a look. Exactly. There's no logic to it, just instinct. But it makes sense in that backwards, earthy, Maltese grandmother way. You want to ask more, but she stands up and starts clearing the table. Too big. She's holding a clove of garlic in one hand and a rosary in the other. She stares at the glow. Later, you sit outside, watching the lanterns flicker along the village paths. Because what else can you do when the sea stirs back? Matteo reappears like a criminal returning to the scene of a bread theft. He flops beside you with a grunt. Whatever the truth, the island remembers. She yell at you? Only twice. I think I'm becoming immune. He stretches, arms behind his head. Yep. So we're just gonna pretend it was a weird fish. Yep. And the sound in the water? Big whale. And the scorch marks? Coincidence. He nods. Right, perfect. This is healthy coping behavior. You glance over. You slept with a salted eel as a pillow last summer. I was experimenting. You both laugh. Not because it's that funny, but because it helps. From across the village, you hear the sound of a drum. You and Matteo both stand. Far out, just beyond the reef line, something is glowing beneath the surface. Faint, green, pulsing. Fisherman whispers, jellyfish. Another shakes his head. Nona appears beside you without a sound. Don't go out tomorrow, she says quietly. You nod. No one says it out loud, but everyone's thinking it. The sea brought something up, something old, and it isn't done. Historians still debate whether pre-Christian rituals on Malta included sea burials of idols, or whether ancient mariners deliberately sank sacred objects to seal the deep. And tonight, so do you. The next morning arrives with the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, it's waiting. No birds, no clanging pots. No one yelling about whose goat got into whose bread oven. You wake before the sun's fully up, instinct dragging you out of bed before your thoughts even catch up. Your dreams were thick and salty, full of water and whispering. The kind of dreams that linger, leaving your skin feeling damp even under dry sheets. The wind is absent again. That's not right. Even on the calmest mornings, Malta's air usually rustles the bushes or clinks the tools left out overnight. But now? Still as a painting. You splash your face with the cold water from the jug. It smells faintly of limestone and old memories. Outside, the light is pale, strained through a hazy layer of high clouds. Matteo is already waiting by the boat when you arrive at the shore, sitting on the dock like he's trying to figure out how to break up with it gently. We're not going out, right? He asks, not planning to. He nods once but doesn't stand. Just keeps watching the water like it's about to confess a secret. Glowing's gone, he says. From last night. You glance up past the reef. He's right, no green shimmer. Just flat water and a line of gulls bobbing silently. You sleep? He snorts. You know how I know I didn't sleep? I dreamed my uncle again. The one who drowned. He was wearing a hat made of seaweed and trying to sell me fish that talked. Her eyebrows are doing things eyebrows should not be able to do. That sounds like something you'd actually buy. Like the sea didn't just forget to feed you, it actively ignored you. That's rare. Neither of you has the energy for this kind of spiritual inquisition before breakfast. Even on bad days, the ocean tosses a few scraps, but today it's given nothing. He grins weakly, then sighs. Don't lie, I saw the wind stop. I saw the fish turn back. I saw the oil float upstream yesterday. You brought something up. Silently, respectfully. Could be your funeral if you're not careful. Neither of you says it, but you're both thinking the same thing. The silence is worse than noise. You recognize bits of Latin, some Maltese, and something that might be Greek or just extremely creative cursing. You help pull the net up onto the beach. It's damp but empty, no catch last night, not even seaweed. And then, just to keep things spicy, old Mizzy comes marching down the path from the village like she's on a mission from God and God is mad. She's wearing 5 shawls, 3 rosaries, and carrying a broom that's seen better centuries. You! She points at you. What did you two bring up? You blink. Matteo blinks. Nothing, you say, too quickly. She steps closer. Matteo, ever the diplomat, gestures vaguely and says, could be sunspots. Mizzy squints. She sweeps the sand in front of your boat with her broom. Not just sweeping, chanting. The scorch mark from the idol is still there, but it hasn't grown. That's something. The ropes are sound. The sail's intact. Nothing broken. Nothing tampered with. Everything appears normal. You and Matteo wait. When she's done, she gives your boat one last judgmental glance and marches back uphill like she just won a duel. Should we do something? Matteo asks. Like what? I don't know. Bless the net? Plant basil? Move inland? Keep pretending everything's fine? He nods. Classic. Waiting. Something was above me. Something huge. I could hear it moving. You spend the rest of the morning checking the hull. Quiet. Except it isn't. The boat creaks softly. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. The Phoenicians, especially, left behind strange symbols, half-fish figures with claws and mouths shaped like spirals. No names, just images. The breeze finally returns, but it feels strange, damp, and chilled, like someone wrung it out of a sponge left too long at sea. Because as you sit there on the dock, oiling the oars and watching the sea, you notice something else. The gulls aren't calling. What? You see them floating, flying, occasionally shifting on the rocks, but they're silent. Not one shriek, not one squawk. Let's go check on the cursed thing we buried yesterday? We're one storm away from turning into a cautionary tale. Now that's unnatural. All right, Matteo says. New theory? Let's hear it. We didn't just find a cursed statue. No? We woke something up. You sigh. That's worse. He nods. Way worse. You lean back, letting your eyes drift shut for a moment. I dreamed something too, you admit quietly. Last night. Matteo looks at you sideways. Yeah? You nod. I was underwater, deep, couldn't see the surface, but I wasn't drowning. Matteo doesn't speak. He doesn't laugh or make a fish joke or suggest you ate bad beans. He just sits there. Because he dreamed something similar. You can see it in his face. Historians still debate whether the early Maltese believed in a singular sea god, or many some say there were dozens, each tied to a cave, a current, a wind. Some were found carved into the rocks above this very cove. You stand slowly, brushing sand from your tunic. I want to see it again. Matteo looks horrified. Not dig it up, you clarify. Just ... check. Make sure it's still there. He groans. You realize that's how every bad story starts? You ignore him and start walking up the path. He follows anyway. Because of course he does. The hill's steeper than you remember. Maybe it's the humidity. Maybe it's the dread. You don't respond. You're too focused. Or maybe it's the fact that every step toward the buried idol feels like peeling open a wound you barely stitched shut. Matteo trails behind, muttering a running commentary of unhelpful observations like, if we find it missing, I'm moving to Sicily. And if it's glowing, I'm going to fake my own death. You reach the clearing, a patch of dry earth above the cove, ringed by low bushes and scattered stones. The spot where you buried the idol is still there, undisturbed. No signs of digging, no strange footprints. No scorched bush or writhing vines. You exhale, then kneel and touch the soil. Still warm, the earth pulses beneath it, not a heartbeat. More like a memory. You pull your hand back quickly. You digging it back up? Matteo crouches beside you, watching closely. No, you say. Just checking. He nods, clearly relieved. Good, because if I see that thing again, I might kiss a priest. You press your palm flat to the ground. That's not normal, you mutter. Matteo frowns. Maybe the sun just heated the soil? At dawn? Whatever's under there, it's not asleep. Not really. It's resting. But it knows you're here. You kneel to examine it. It's circular, maybe hand-sized, with a swirl in the middle. Not freshly carved, but not ancient either. Somewhere in between. A sign? A warning? The scrubby bushes feel taller now. Somehow more ... alert. The kind of alertness you feel in a room when someone stops talking mid-sentence and everyone suddenly knows something is wrong. Right, so... Not the sun. You both stand and step back, not turning your backs just yet. As you return to the village path, something catches your eye, a faint mark etched into the stone near the base of a thorn bush. Seen that before? You ask Matteo. He crouches, squints. Looks Phoenician, maybe Greek? You failed both of those classes. Yes, but I failed them with confidence. Some say they represented water gates, then places between the natural and the supernatural, portals the sea gods used, or imprisoned spirits. You nod at Mizzy as she sweeps invisible curses off the pier. You smile at old Bartle, who's feeding pickled turnips to a goat that absolutely should not be eating pickled anything. Historians still debate whether these spiral symbols were just art, religious icons, or territorial markings. Fishermen prep their boats. Children chase chickens. The air smells like flour and charcoal. The world pretends it's normal. She motions to a low bench. You sit. She stands, ladling broth into a bowl you didn't ask for. And you're starting to believe that pretending might be the only thing holding it all together. You walk back in silence, the path narrowing around you. As the village roofs come into view, Matteo finally speaks. We should tell someone. You hesitate. Like who? The priest? He'd burn the whole cove. Jargu? He'd try to carve it into a new boat. Matteo grunts. Nona? You nod slowly. She probably already knows. Smart, not enough, but smart. Back at the dock, the day has begun in earnest. You don't speak to anyone. You help Matteo mend a net. But you don't talk about the statue until sunset. A fisherman named Lazarus found one in his net. Smaller, cracked. He kept it. Brought it home. Said it gave him dreams. Said the sea talked to him. That's when Nona calls you over. You don't argue. You follow her into her cool stone house, where the walls are thick and the air always smells faintly of fennel and dried thyme. You found one, she says, not looking at you. Nothing's enough once the old ones notice you. You nod. Yes. She finally turns. Where? You don't look at the sea unless it calls you by name, and even then, you pretend you didn't hear it. And if you can't run, you pray. Cove. Under the net. Dragged it in without realizing. Still have it? Buried it. She nods. She places the bowl in front of you, sits across the table, folds her arms. You know what it is? No. Neither do I, but I've seen it before. Your spoon stops mid-stir. What? She nods. Years ago, before you were born. Out beyond the reef, you swallow hard. What happened to him? She looks down at her hands. He walked into the sea one night. Fully dressed, never came back. You set the spoon down carefully. Did anyone try to get it back? His wife burned the house. Wouldn't let anyone near it? Was that enough? Nona shrugs. You stare at her. What do we do? She leans forward. You don't fish for a while. You don't sail. You nod slowly. And if it comes back? Then you run, she says. The air in the house is heavy now. Your bowl of soup goes untouched. The spoon trembles just slightly on the rim. Outside, the sun slips beneath the horizon. And from far beyond the reef, a single gull cries out. The first noise from them all day. The village heeds the silence like a commandment. No boats set out the next morning. Not even the bold ones, the boys who claim to laugh at storms and drink sea brine like it's wine. Their sails remain furled, nets stay coiled like sleeping serpents. The harbor is still, save for the lap of waves and the occasional groan of old wood shifting its weight. It's superstition, maybe, or shared instinct. But no one goes out, not after the gulls cried again just before dawn. You wake to the sound of Matteo knocking lightly on the doorframe. His voice is unusually low. You up? You nod, though you barely slept. Your dreams were worse this time. Not to see something beneath it, something stirring up. Matteo looks like he's slept even less. His eyes are rimmed red, and he's holding 2 cups of the thick, gritty village coffee no one really enjoys but everyone needs. The light reflects off it too cleanly, like it's been polished. It's too calm again, too quiet. Nona said we're not to leave the village today, he says, handing you one. You sip. It tastes like regret and boiled dirt. Perfect. You both walk down to the harbor anyway, not to sail, but to watch. The sea is taken on a strange sheen. Mizzy is already on the pier, scattering salt in wide circles, muttering under her breath. She glares at you both as you approach. I warned you. We didn't bring it on purpose, Matteo replies. She jabs a finger at him. That doesn't matter. You touched it. A couple of old men nod in your direction, then turn away quickly. A boy with a net clutches it tighter, his father pulling him back. A few other villagers are gathering now. Not a crowd, but enough to feel watched. The 2 of you walk away. Feels like we've got a sickness, Matteo mutters. A social plague. You'd think we invited the sea ghost to dinner. You pass by Georgie's workshop, where the broken keel still leans against the fence like a silent accusation. He sees you from inside and nods. No jokes, no taunts. Just that slow, heavy acknowledgement that something old has cracked open between the sky and the water. By midday, things begin to shift. A goat gives birth prematurely near the olive grove. A clay jar explodes, unprovoked, in the back of the bakery. And someone's dog, normally the gentlest creature on the island, refuses to leave the shade, growling low at the air. Matteo and you sit outside the nut shed, both pretending to work on repairs. But your hands are slow. Your eyes keep drifting to the sea. There's something under there, he says finally. Not just the idol, I think it's more. It's not much. One small stone room, a wooden cross, and a rusted bell that rings only when the wind's in a forgiving mood. He's sweeping the floor, his movements slow and deliberate. He glances up as you enter. But inside, it's cool and still, a sanctuary. Like what? Not in any book I'm supposed to read. He shrugs, a temple, a door. Something sealed, and we cracked it. Historians still debate whether ancient structures exist under these waters, you say softly. Temples to Melkart may be Baal, places older than memory. Have you ever heard of something waking in the sea? Matteo picks at a knot. I don't think it's a god. You look at him. There's a tiny alcove there, carved into the stone. A shepherd fell in, found this wedged into the rocks. He brought it here. Told the priest at the time to keep it away from the water. Inside it is an old tablet limestone etched with faint, spiraling symbols. I think it's worse. You don't ask what that means. Instead, you decide to visit the chapel. And we don't go near the water until it speaks clearly. You whisper. At first, it's just a low murmur. Then it rises like a song. Not sung in any human tongue. Deep, slow, sorrowful. Like something vast remembering what it once was. Father Samuel is there, of course, always is. You look like you've seen the end of days, he says, only half joking. Matteo is already there, barefoot, eyes wide. The villagers stand in doorways, on rooftops, in shadows. You hesitate. Father, he pauses, sets the broom aside. Spirals, circles, like writing. But he walks to the back wall, gestures for you to follow. You know what that is? He asks, no. It was pulled from a cliff cave 2 generations ago. Why? Because it hummed when it got wet. You stare at the tablet. The spiral matches the one you saw near the buried idol. It's happening again, isn't it? Father Samuel nods. I think the seal's breaking. The words hit hard, like stone dropped into deep water. Then what do? He studies you for a long time. We pray, we prepare. That night, the sea does exactly that. You're in bed, drifting near sleep, when the sound begins. You throw off the blanket and rush outside. The sea glows again. Not green this time, blue. A soft, pulsating light that moves in patterns. The whole harbor is lit with it. Matteo grabs your arm. Is it calling us? He asks. You don't answer. Because deep down you know the truth. It isn't calling you. It's warning you. The glow fades by dawn. Not all at once, slowly, like a lantern carried away down a long, dark tunnel. The last flicker disappears, just a rooster's crow, and the sun bleeds orange over the sea. By the time you stand on the harbor wall with Matteo, the water looks normal again. But nothing feels normal. There are no jokes this morning. No bickering about coffee strength or whether goats are technically demons in wool. The village has slipped into that rare state of complete mutual denial. The kind of silence you usually find at funerals or just after a bad storm passes and no one knows how many roofs were lost. You and Matteo sit side by side, legs dangling over the seawall, staring out. You know everyone behind you is doing the same in their own way, glancing at the sea from behind windows, whispering over bread dough, checking their nets out of habit but not touching them. So Matteo says finally, "What happens now?" You don't know. You shake your head. We wait. For what? The next sign. He groans. Could be anything. A bleeding fish? A boiling well? A statue walking into the bakery? Don't joke about that. Mizzy would throw holy flour at it. You sit in silence for another long while, trying not to listen for humming. He's either a tax collector or an exorcist. Trying not to see shapes in the ripples. Trying very hard not to imagine what it meant, that glowing song. Was it a message? A curse? A countdown? At mid-morning, a stranger arrives. This doesn't happen often. Your village isn't a place people visit on purpose. How often has the sea glowed? Did anyone find anything ... unusual? But there he is, a man in a long brown cloak, sandals, and a beard too neat to belong to anyone from around here. He doesn't speak much, just walks the village slowly, scanning the buildings, the cliffs, the people. You spot him from the dock, he sees you too and nods. No face, just hollow impressions where eyes should be. Here we go, Matteo mutters. You meet the man near the chapel. I've read about it. That's why I'm here. He introduces himself simply. Brother Tommaso. I'm here to observe. You raise an eyebrow. Observe what? He glances toward the sea. I'll know it when I see it. You and Matteo exchange a look. That's not ominous at all. Brother Tommaso walks with you back toward the cove. Along the way, he asks simple questions in a quiet voice. When did the wind change? You hesitate. Matteo does not. Then he kneels and places one hand on the ground, just as you did before. We pulled something up. Day before yesterday. Statue. Looked old. Wrapped it up, buried it above the cove. Tommaso stops walking. Describe it. Not physically, but like someone who's seen too many storms and all of them came from inside the earth. You do short, humanoid, sharp features, spiral etched into its chest. He nods slowly, then continues walking. Have you seen this before? You ask. The Phoenicians knew. The Greeks tried to forget. The order stumbled on a few and built towers in the wrong places. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes, so it's not the first. No, he says, and unfortunately, it's never the last. You reach the cove. Everything looks the same: cracked limestone, tangled nets, your boat gently shifting in the breeze. Tommaso stands very still for a long time. You prepare. If it's truly waking up, the sea won't be the only thing that changes. Matteo lags behind, chewing the inside of his cheek. After a few seconds, he whispers, "It's close." Matteo wisely steps back. "What is it?" you ask. He doesn't answer immediately. When he finally stands, he looks tired. "There are things beneath the Mediterranean," he says. "Things older than Rome, older than Carthage, older than language." "What do we do then? Just wait for the next storm?" He turns to you. Some things sleep, and some of those things dream. But when they start remembering, they send symbols. Like the idol? He nods. Or songs. Or light, sometimes storms. You point toward the soil. It's buried there. And too many mouths past a staircase carved into coral that leads nowhere. He considers. Leave it. For now. Why? Because digging it up makes it ... stronger, not in the physical sense. In the remembering sense. That doesn't make any, just trust me, sweating. You cross your arms. "No," he says, turning back toward the village. You follow him in silence. "Do you believe him?" He asks quietly. You shrug. "Do you need belief when the sea sings in your sleep?" That night, no glow appears, no wind stirs. But no one sleeps well. You dream again, only this time you're not in the sea, you're under it. Not floating, falling. Down through endless blue, past broken stone columns, past a whale the size of a hill with no eyes. And at the bottom, in the darkest trench, something turns towards you. You wake with salt on your lips. And someone knocking at the door. It's Giorgio. He's pale. "There's something," he says. "You have to see it. You don't ask, you just follow. Because whatever it is, it's not waiting anymore." Giorgio leads you downhill in the dark. The stars are still out, dimmed only slightly by the hint of false dawn. You don't know what time it is, but your feet are clumsy, your breath shallow. Please tell me Giorgio's about to show us a goat with two heads and not the actual end of the world. Your heart is already racing, and you don't know why. That's the worst kind of fear, the kind that shows up first and asks questions later. Matteo catches up a few paces behind you, shirt inside out, boots mismatched, clearly having rolled out of bed at the same frantic knock. Like seawater mixed with iron and ash. Like something that should have stayed buried but didn't. You don't answer. Neither does Giorgio. You follow and pass the harbor, past the chapel, past Mizzy's now abandoned market stall, and finally toward the southern cliff path where the sea caves are. The smell hits you first. It's not death, exactly. Not fish either. It's wrong. But its skin is the color of driftwood, and its back has ridges like coral, and when it shifts, you hear the faint creak of something that's spent centuries underwater. Giorgio stops at the edge of a natural inlet, one you've seen 1,000 times but never thought twice about. Just a crescent of rock and sand. But now, there's something standing in the shallows. Not someone, something. Half submerged, slouched forward like it's exhausted or praying. It looks human at first, maybe 7 feet tall, no face. No clothes. Just long, bony arms reaching into the water as if searching for something lost. Giorgio says nothing. Just points. "What is it?" Matteo whispers. The tide laps at your boots, but the figure doesn't move. Doesn't seem to notice you. Or maybe it does and simply doesn't care. No one answers because no one knows. You step closer slowly, cautiously, until you're just at the edge of the rock. And that's somehow worse. Just a vibration that moves up your legs and into your chest, like a tuning fork pressed to your ribs. It feels like interrupting a funeral you weren't invited to. "Is it alive?" Matteo murmurs. "Looks like it," you whisper back, but barely. Brother Tommaso arrives behind you, breathless. His eyes go wide the moment he sees it. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't speak. He just kneels. "What are you doing?" Matteo hisses. Tommaso bows his head. "It's not here for us." The figure shifts again. The sound it makes is low and drawn out. Not a growl. Not a word. And then it steps backward, 1 foot, then another. Slowly, it retreats into the water, vanishing into the sea as if it had never been there. And then, the tide rolls backward. Do we bury this one too? Just for a second. It pulls away from the shore, not much. Maybe a few feet, but enough to expose slick stone and shells and something shiny poking up through the sand. Matteo steps forward to get a better look. You stop him with one hand. Because it's another idol, smaller, smoother, almost polished, and it's pulsing gently with a faint blue light. Gifts for calm passage. Symbols of peace or surrender. Most of those offerings were crude. Oil, wine, even blood. Matteo says. Tommaso shakes his head. No, this one was left, not pulled. Left for what? He stands. For us. You stare down at it. Something about it feels different from the first. Not angry, not ancient. Or returns sad, doesn't glow, just sits there, quiet and still. Like a message in the sand from something that can't speak in your tongue. Its spiral is smoother, more deliberate than the first. No jagged edges, no sharp angles. We pray it doesn't wake up the rest. Historians still debate whether Phoenician sailors practiced object offerings to communicate with sea entities, less worship and more diplomacy. But this idol feels like a letter. A breeze picks up gentle, warm and normal. Birds call. A rooster crows. A pot clatters in the bakery. You wrap it in your old sailcloth and carry it up the hill. No one follows you. Even Matteo waits behind, watching the sea in case something else emerges. By the time you reach the chapel, the sun is just beginning to rise. You place the idol on the altar. It doesn't hum. Tommaso enters behind you. You did the right thing, he says. How do you know? Because it let you. You stare at the statue. What happens next? Tommaso sighs. We listen. We wait. You look at him sharply. There's more? There's always more. You leave the chapel with the sun behind you, casting long shadows across the village roofs. For the first time in days, things sound alive, but you don't relax. You can't, because you know now this isn't over, it never was. The sea is ancient, yes. But more than that, it remembers. And now, so do you? You don't go back to the water that day, no one does. Even the most stubborn among the fishermen old. Salvu with his weathered tattoos and zero patience for anything mystical keeps his nets dry. The boats remain tied, oars stacked. The sea, for once, is given distance, and the village somehow exhales. It's not peace, exactly. But it's a truce. A few women leave herbs on the windowsill. Mizzi ties another 6 garlic bulbs to her doorframe, muttering about spirals and sea witch business. Matteo attempts to fix a roof tile, but mostly just stares at the horizon, squinting as if daring the sea to blink first. People still glance at the chapel as they pass. Like a weight in the room you haven't acknowledged yet. You keep your distance from the idol. You pass the chapel and the hairs on your arms rise like it's calling to you in a language your bones still remember. The signs don't come all at once, but they come. The message isn't loud, not anymore. He takes a room in old Rita's attic and spends his mornings walking the coast with a notebook. Every once in a while he stops, touches the earth, then scribbles something frantically. You ask what he's writing. You don't need to touch it to feel it. It's single quotes there. Tommaso stays in the village longer than expected. Patterns, he says simply. You don't press. You spend the next afternoon helping Matteo mend a fishing net not because it needs mending, but because doing something with your hands keeps your thoughts from spiraling. So, Matteo says, threading twine, we're not cursed exactly. Not cursed, you agree. Just watched. Super comforting. He glances at the chapel. I keep thinking about that first one, the idol we buried. You think it was angry? You nod. It felt angry. But the second one, it felt sad. You pause. Like it was warning us, not large, just a few feet across. But carved carefully, deliberately, and not there the day before. He taps the net. Then maybe it wasn't just a warning. Maybe it was. An apology. You hadn't considered that. Some think the figures with spiral chests were protective spirits, meant to hold the deeper ones in check. Just kneels beside the spiral and places his palm flat in the center. There's no chisel marks, no tool sign. Just smooth, perfect curves like something ancient reached up through the stone and remembered itself. Others argue they were the same being light and dark, peace and storm, memory and madness. Historians still debate whether ancient sea cults in the Mediterranean believed in a dual-nature ocean spirit, one wrathful, one mournful. You think of the first idol's sharp edges. and the second smoother lines. Maybe they were opposites. Like the sea is pressing closer to the island, crowding against it, testing its edges. Maybe there were conversations. The next strange thing doesn't happen for 3 days. You're climbing the ridge to gather firewood when you spotted a circle etched into the limestone. Matteo joins you a moment later. He sees your expression, then looks down. Another spiral. You both crouch, run your fingers across the grooves. Tommaso finds you there and doesn't speak for a long time. Then he whispers something you barely catch. It's spreading. You help him cover the spiral with stones. No one says it, but everyone understands. Some symbols aren't meant to be read. Not yet. That night, the wind shifts. Not a storm, not yet. But the salt in the air changes. It's heavier. You sleep lightly, dreamlessly. But when you wake, there's a mark on your window. Giorgio swears he saw someone walking across the waves before dawn. Just condensation, maybe, or breath. In the shape of a spiral. You wipe it away quickly and pretend it meant nothing. The next day, Nona takes you aside. You call his name until your throat is dry. The sun sinks low. The light turns gold, then gray. She's quiet for a moment, slicing herbs with unnecessary force. I know you've been dreaming, she says. You nod. So has the village. You blink. What? She stops slicing. Looks you square in the eye. Everyone's having them. Sea dreams. Spiral dreams, voices in the water, children crying in their sleep. Why haven't they said anything? Because no one wants to be first. You feel a chill then. Not because of what's coming, but because it's already here. And it has been for a while. The final sign comes just before evening. A boy Turu, no more than 9, goes missing. You join the search with half the village. The paths, the coves, the cliffs. Then, from the direction of the cove, someone shouts. You run. Turu is there standing barefoot at the edge of the tide, staring out at the water. He's unharmed, not crying, not scared. Just calm. You kneel beside him, ask what happened. He looks at you very slowly and says, The sea showed you what? His brow furrows. The door, he says softly. Under the world, and then. He walks back into the village like nothing happened. You and Matteo watch him disappear into the crowd. Neither of you speak for a long time. Because you both understand now, the sea didn't wake up. It's been waiting. You don't sleep that night. Not really. You lie down. You close your eyes. But it's like lying in a shallow pool. You can feel everything ripple above you. Every gust of wind, every shifting beam, every dog barking 3 streets away. And underneath all that, a hum. Not loud, not constant, but there. Like your bones are tuning into something too deep to hear with ears. Children still chase each other, though they run a little slower, and their laughter has more questions than joy. The village pretends to be calm the next morning. Bread still bakes. Goats still bleat, but no boats go out. Again, it's not a call to mass. Not today. It's more like a heartbeat, a reminder. Father Samuel rings the chapel bell once, just after dawn. Brother Tommaso joins you and Matteo at the cliff edge, overlooking the cove. The boy, he says, was telling the truth. You glance at him. About the door? The sea's alive. It's got a door in its basement, and now it's showing blueprints to 9-year-olds. He nods. They're always the first to see. The ones not yet trained to disbelieve. Matteo sighs, arms folded. So what now? You smirk a little. The joke helps, even if it's thin. In every cycle, when these things stir, someone always chooses to follow the message, to open what was locked, or to bury it again. But this time, the messages are stronger, sharper, less subtle. We're nearing the moment of choice. Tommaso doesn't laugh. Choice? He nods. You think of the second idol, the spirals. Toru's eyes. What happens if no one chooses? Then the sea chooses for us. A gull shrieks high overhead. You all flinch. It's not the bird, it's the silence afterward. Too sharp. She's sitting outside, peeling onions and humming something too old to have a name. Too expectant. You head back down the ridge and stop by Nona's house. She looks up as you approach. It's almost time, isn't it? You nod. She sets down the knife. Then take this. From her pocket, she pulls a small, flat stone. Smooth. Pale gray. A spiral scratched into one side, not carved. Scratched, like it fought to escape her hand as she made it. What is it? Something to hold on to, she says, for when the sea tries to take everything. You don't argue, you take it. That night, the sea glows again. Not blue, not green, red. It starts faint, just a ripple at the edge of the horizon. But within minutes, the entire bay pulses with it. A low, slow heartbeat of color, as if the ocean itself has blood. People gather without speaking. Doors open, lamps flicker. No one lights torches, no one calls out, they just watch. At the center of the harbor, something rises. Not all the way. Just enough to break the surface. A shape, a structure. Stone? Coral? You can't tell. It has sharp angles and impossible curves like architecture remembered through water and dream. Matteo whispers, the door. You nod, throat dry. It's opening. No, says Tommaso, stepping forward beside you. It's remembering. Spirals run along its base, huge, deliberate spirals, some wide enough to walk across. The sea around it stills. No waves, no birds. Just red light and waiting water. The structure sits half submerged, glowing gently. Tommaso takes a step closer. Don't, you say. But he's already moving. The water parts for him. No ripple touches his feet. The crowd watches in silence as he walks into the shallows. He stops just before the structure, kneels, places both hands in the water, and whispers. The glow dims, then intensifies. A beam of light rises from the center of the structure vertical, straight up into the sky like a searchlight for gods. Then it vanishes. The structure sinks. The glow disappears. The water returns to black. Tommaso stands alone in the surf, soaked, shaking. When he returns, his face is pale. I asked it to wait, he says. And it did. For how long? He doesn't answer. You help him to the chapel. Nonna follows behind, clutching her herbs and muttering. Later that night, Matteo finds you by the shore again. The stars have returned. The breeze smells like salt and nothing more. The tide is quiet. So what now? He asks. You hold up the stone Nonna gave you. The spirals still scratch there. We remember. You say, remember what? That the sea doesn't forget. He nods. Do we go back to fishing? You glance out at the water. It looks normal now. Peaceful, but you know better. Eventually you say, but not tomorrow, not for a while. Because even though the door has closed, you know exactly where it is now. You expect the next morning to feel lighter, like waking after a storm and finding the roof still intact. But the truth is, the air has changed, not in smell or temperature, not in sound. Just ... presence. You can't pretend anymore. It's like living next to a stranger's door that was cracked open one night and now it's shut again, but you know what's behind it. Matteo is already outside when you wake, sitting barefoot on the dock, tossing pebbles into the sea. They haven't sung since last night, he says without turning around. The sea? He nods. I don't know if that's better or worse, you admit. What they can summon, every ripple now feels like a blink. Every foam crest a whisper. You sit beside him. The waves look innocent enough, but you've seen what they can carry. Mizzy sets her garlic wreaths on fire just in case. And old Bartle spends an entire hour pointing a hand mirror at the sea, convinced it makes them dizzy. You don't know whether he's praying, sleeping, or trying to unsee what he saw. No one disturbs him. Not even Nonna. Tommaso stays in his room. Meanwhile, the village tiptoes. Giorgio sharpens his tools too loudly, in her own kitchen. The day unfolds in strange, slow layers. Nothing happens. And somehow that's worse than something. You help rebuild a section of fence that a goat demolished weeks ago. Matteo patches a sail. A few kids play in the square, but they don't chase each other today. They draw spirals in the dirt with sticks. No one tells them to stop. By evening, Nonna calls a village meeting. Not in the chapel, not in the town square. She doesn't ask. She summons. You think it's Bartle. But the glow's gone. The shape's gone. Tommaso said the door closed. And no one argues with Nonna when she summons. There are 13 of you. You think the sea doesn't have rules? It invented rules. And the first one is this. When the waves stop moving, you don't go in. Not for fishing, not for waiting, not even for a shell. Seated on stools, barrels, crates, packed together like salted fish, all silent as she ladles soup into mismatched bowls. Second rule, spirals mean memory. Don't erase them. Don't copy them. And for the love of the saints, don't draw your own. When she finally sits, she speaks without looking up. The sea isn't done, she says. Not with us, not with anyone. Bury it. Hide it. Sink it again. The sea forgets slowly, but it never forgives pride. Someone clears their throat. Nona nods. It closed. It didn't lock. None of you chose this. Matteo whispers, so what do we do? Just wait until it opens again? Nona's eyes sharpen. We remember. And we pass it down. Mizzy raises a hand like she's asking to leave class. You mean ... tell the children? All of them, Nona says, everything. The song, the idol, the light, and the rules. Every generation, the sea chooses someone to remember. This time it was us. The what now? Matteo mutters. Rules, she says firmly. Or it might roll up again next week with a new face and a different light, but either way, when it comes, we'll be ready. Everyone's quiet. She continues. A few people shift uncomfortably. Third rule, if the sea gives you a gift, don't keep it. Silence falls. Someone's soup goes cold. You speak finally. Why us? Nona looks at you. Because we saw it. That's not an answer. It's the only answer. You look around the room at your neighbors, your friends. The people who raised you and traded fish for bread and borrowed shovels and held you when you cried. But all of you carry it now. You recognize the spiral. The same smooth curve from the second idol. Not cruel. Not kind. Just old. Nona leans back. The sea might sleep another 100 years. Someone raises their bowl in silent toast. And one by one the rest follow. You don't feel brave. Not really. But you feel prepared. It's enough for now. That night you dream again. You're standing on the cliff edge. The sky is clear. The sea is calm. But beneath the surface you see them. Figures. Swimming? No. Waiting. One turns toward you. It reaches out not with threat, but invitation. And then you wake. No sound. No glow. Just the whisper of waves outside. You walk to the door and open it. The air is still. No spirals on the window. But in the distance, a gull cries once, sharp, alone. You whisper to the night, we remember. And shut the door. The sun rises over the cove like it always does, but now you don't trust it. Too golden, too quiet. As if the sky's trying a bit too hard to convince you everything is normal again. It's still there, rocking gently in the shallows. Harmless, faithful, you have expected to be gone or replaced with something else. Something with coral ribs and barnacle eyes. You and Matteo go down to the harbor, neither of you speaking until you see your boat. Instead, it just waits. Matteo exhales. You think we can sail again? You stare at the water. Maybe you don't sound convinced, because I'm not. You walk the length of the dock. The village is starting to move again slowly. Cautiously. Mizzy is baking. Jorgu has rebuilt half a boat he claimed he would burn. Even Bartle is back to yelling at goats. Everyone's pretending a little harder than they used to. The kind that once meant fish were near and coin might follow. Smiles are a second too late. Laughter ends too quickly. People check their reflections more than usual as if making sure they're still human. But you can feel it. At midday, the wind picks up. It's the good kind, salty and warm. And for the first time in what feels like years but is probably just days, you and Matteo push off from shore. You row gently, hearts pounding, eyes on the water. Matteo casts a line. Neither of you speaks. The only sound is wood creaking and the whisper of waves against the hull. It doesn't glow. It doesn't sing, it just sways. You drop your nets like you always did, then a tug. Matteo's line twitches. He pulls. You grab the net just in case. And when he hauls up the catch, it's a fish, a perfectly ordinary living, flopping fish. No footprints, no idols, no spirals. Just ordinary rock and seaweed and sun-warmed shore. You both just stare at it. Then laughter, real shocked, absurd laughter. It echoes across the bay and bounces off the limestone cliffs. Just vanished sometime during the night. Nona says he was never meant to stay. That watchers like him never stay long after a door has closed. They carry the memory and they go. Is it cursed? Mateo gasps between snorts. The second idol is gone too. Nona won't say where she put it. You think maybe she buried it again, but deeper this time. It's a mullet, you say. They're always cursed. He holds it up like a trophy. Praise milk cart. We caught a fish and not a glowing skull. Just a shared meal bread, olives, the fish you caught, wine that probably should have been drunk 2 summers ago. You lower the net and feel a few more twitch inside. It's not much, but it's something. Do you think other villages have gone through this? On the way back, you'd pass the cove just to look. The sand is smooth now. Tommaso is gone. No note, no explanation. The chapel remains quiet. You still glance inside when you pass. Some secrets need wait. That night, the village hosts a meal. Not a celebration, not exactly. Everyone comes. Even Mizzy brings out a pie, though she insists she baked it for protection, not pleasure. You sit beside Mateo, legs stretched out, back against the stone wall of the bakery. The fire crackles low. You linger behind, watching the last embers fade into the dark. Do you think this is it? He asks. Are we done? You swirl your wine. I think it's paused. That's not very comforting. Neither is the sea. He leans his head back and looks up at the stars. Maybe. And if they didn't? Then we remember for them. People begin drifting home, full of fish and weary relief. Just before you stand to leave, Nona sits beside you. She hands you something wrapped in cloth. You open it carefully. Inside is a spiral stone, not glowing, not humming. Just etched and smooth. Why me? You ask. She shrugs, because you didn't run. I didn't have time to, but you stayed, even when it got strange, especially then. You stare at the spiral. Is it dangerous? She leans in close. Everything is, but this one's yours. You don't know what that means, but you don't ask. You carry the stone home. Set it on the shelf beside your fishing hooks and an old bone comb. And you sleep. Dreamless this time. But in the early hours, when the sky is still gray and even the gulls are quiet, you wake, not from noise, but from a feeling, and you realize it's not fear, it's something else. Something deeper, recognition. The sea's remembered you. And now you remember it? You wake up to fog. Not the light, poetic kind that kisses the fields and makes poets sigh into their bread. No, this fog clings, it holds on. Thick, low, and muffled like the whole island has been placed inside a damp cloth, Mateo knocks on your door. He's already soaked from the walkover, hair slicked down, eyes narrowed. This is new, he mutters. Fog like this in summer? You shake your head, never this heavy. The village is just shadows in the mist. Shapes move people, probably, but none get close. Everyone seems to be walking softer, like they're worried the fog might listen. You step outside together, boots squelching slightly on dew-wet ground. Even the bravest souls aren't setting sail in this soup. Down by the harbor, you hear the gulls crying, but the boats are all tied and untouched. It's like the island doesn't want us to leave, Mateo says. Or maybe it doesn't want anything to come in. You pass by the chapel and see the door ajar. Inside, it's darker than you expect. The air's thicker, too. You step in slowly, expecting what? More spirals? Another idol? No, just a single thing on the altar. A shell not from your coast. Too smooth, too bright. Pearlescent in a way the Mediterranean rarely manages anymore. You pick it up, and the sound so faint you might be imagining it rises in your ear. Wait, just that word, just once. Mateo peers over your shoulder. What is it? A gift, you murmur? Or a warning, you keep it? Because of course you do. In 53, we had a fog that swallowed 2 goats and a priest. Only one came back. She's the only one who doesn't seem fazed by the fog. Later, you join Nona at the market square. Seen worse, she says, snapping the ends off beans. Which one? She winks. Still not sure. About normal things. Turnip prices. Leaky roofs. Dreams that no longer come. You sit beside her and talk quietly. It didn't say how long. Just wait. So don't go poking at the sea. Let it settle. But she sees the shell in your pocket and gives a small nod. You heard it, she says. You nod back. It said wait. Then you wait, she says. Do you think it's testing us? She shrugs. Maybe it's trying to speak. Trying to remember or forget. Can the sea forget? She looks you dead in the eye. Only when we help it. That afternoon the fog lifts as suddenly as it came. The sun cuts through and the harbor reappears, and for the first time in days, children play without glancing at the sky every few minutes. You breathe deeply. It smells like water again. Not salt, not blood, not copper, just water. That night, you and Matteo finally go back out. Just to test the nets, it's quiet. The sea moves as it should. There, looks like the sea's feeling generous. But as you lower the net, you feel something brush your ankle, just a tickle. A touch, you freeze. Your hands move on their own, your mind still drifting back to the shell. You don't put it with the spiral stone. That feels wrong. You place it on the windowsill instead. Let the moonlight touch it. Matteo notices. What? Nothing, you lie? Seaweed? But the chill lingers, and when you pull the net back in, it's full. Too full, more fish than you've caught in a month, all alive. All fresh, all just... Matteo laughs, moving, spiraling. You don't laugh. Because generosity always has an edge. Back on land, you clean the fish and carry them home. That night, the dreams return. Not of doors. Not of voices, just shapes. Twisting. You wake with the sense that something is watching you, not hostile. Not hungry, just watching, like the sea is waiting for you to make the next move. In the morning, there's a new carving on the cliff path. Not a spiral this time, a shell, carved deep into the rock. And underneath it, scratched in Maltese, we are listening. You stand there for a long time. Then you carve something beneath it. Just 2 words, so are we. The shell on your windowsill hums again, only briefly. Just as the wind picks up, just as you're pulling your boots on for the morning. A soft, low murmur, not a voice, not quite music, but somewhere in between, like the sea is clearing its throat. You glance at it and whisper, still waiting. It says nothing. This is a knowing quiet. Like everyone understands the rules now, like they've all had the same dream. You don't expect it to. He's carving fish bones into shapes again, something he used to do to keep his hands busy between seasons. But now the shapes are less whimsical and more patterned. The village has quieted again, but it's not the old quiet, not the casual kind, with chatter between rooftops and shouted arguments over whose goat has been chewing the linen. You head down to the boats, passing Bartle on his porch, spirals, shells, something he swears will bring in, squid so big we'll only need a second boat just for ink. You nod at him. He doesn't nod back. Not out of rudeness, he's just focused, listening. At the harbor, Matteo's already in the boat, fiddling with a new kind of lure. You step in and toss him an orange. Bribe for the sea gods? He jokes, you smirk, or breakfast. The fog hasn't returned. The sea looks calm, but now even calm carries weight. You row in silence, the boat gliding through still waters like it's being watched. Which, of course, it is. You drop the nets. Wait, listen. When you pull them back up, they're heavy again. I saw one again. Out by the rocks, tall, didn't move. Didn't glow, just watched. For the spirits, she says, and for you if they're full. Another good catch, ordinary fish, ordinary sea. But neither of you believes in ordinary anymore. You return to shore. Mizzy meets you with a woven basket of herbs and bread. You thank her. She nods, then leans in closer. A name you pass down when you're not sure if someone is gone or just waiting somewhere else. You swallow. Did anyone else see? She shakes her head. Not sure, but the gulls didn't go near it. She walks off before you can ask more. That night, the village meets again. This time, not in fear. Just communion, a kind of agreement between people who've all lived through the same dream. Bread is passed, wine shared. The fire is small, but it's warm. Nona speaks last, as always. We can't stop it, she says, but we can remember it right. Tomas's name is spoken, not like a eulogy. Like a placeholder. The kind that says, we're still here. Later, Matteo joins you on the cliffside. You both stare out at the water, now painted orange by moonrise. He speaks softly. You know what this reminds me of? You shake your head. That story about the fisherman who followed a whale into the deep and never came back. Because the whale was a god? He nods, or a door, depending on who tells it. You ask, would you follow it? Matteo is quiet for a long time, not unless it asks nicely. You both laugh. Tired laughter. Then you reach into your coat and pull out the shell. Hold it up. For a moment, it's just a shell, but then the hum returns. This time, it vibrates in your palm, warmer, clearer. You hear something like a word, close. Not a warning. The village around you is quiet, still, peaceful. The stars are brighter. The sea hums not with threat, but with recognition, not a command, a state. Matteo hears it too. Did it just say, you nod? Yeah, close to what? You don't know. That night, the dream returns, but this time it's not underwater. You're standing in the square. In the center of the square stands a figure, not the idol, not the watcher, just ... you, holding the shell. And behind you, a door, not a stone door, not even a real one. A shape, a line in the air, a spiral drawn with light. You reach toward it and wake up. There's mist on your window, but no shapes. The shell is warm in your hand. You don't speak. You just breathe. Because you're starting to understand. The door isn't something you open. The door is you? You wake before dawn, fully alert like your body knew something your mind hadn't caught up with yet. No dreams this time. No spirals, no watchers, just a pull. You step outside. The sea is glass. No wind, no waves, no sound but your own breathing. Matteo meets you on the path down to the harbor. He doesn't ask what you're doing. He just falls in step beside you, like you've rehearsed this before. And in a way, maybe you have. Her shawl ripples gently, but the air is still. She looks at you, then at the water, and says simply, Nona's already there, sitting on a rock like she's part of it. It's time. You and Matteo push the boat out, no oars. No sail, just trust. The water carries you, gently, deliberately. Out beyond the cove, past the usual fishing spots, past even the dark patch where the second idol once stood. You drift. The sea says nothing, but it feels full. Like it's holding its breath, then beneath you a glow, not red. Not blue, white. Soft and wide, not sharp like before. Like moonlight caught in a pool. It rises slowly and you brace yourself. But this time, nothing breaks the surface. There's no shape, no figure, no towering idol. Just the light. It touches the bottom of the boat and stops, and then it pulses, not in anger, in rhythm, like a heartbeat. You glance at Matteo. He's staring down, lips parted. Do you hear it? You nod. It's not a sound, it's a memory. Your hands move on their own. You reach into your coat and pull out the spiral stone. Then the shell. He holds up a tiny bone-carving Bartle gave him the day before, spiral-shaped, pale and strange. Matteo does the same. The boat rocks gently. The sea accepts them all. One by one, you drop them into the glow. They sink slowly, each glowing faintly as it descends. The sea doesn't rush, it doesn't pull, it receives. And then the glow fades, not like it's vanishing, like it's done. You sit there for a long time, waiting for something, an answer. A sign, anything? But there's only the sun beginning to rise behind you, the sky blooming in soft gold and violet. Matteo breaks the silence. I don't know what we just did, you nod. Same. But it feels... He trails off, unable to name it. So you try, whole. He looks at you, startled. Then he nods. Yeah. You turn the boat gently, rowing back with slow, even strokes. The sea lets you go. Back in the harbor, the village is stirring. But something's shifted. The air is different, lighter, like someone opened a window after a long storm. Nona greets you with warm bread and tea, no questions. Just a pat on your hand that says, I know. That afternoon, the children draw spirals again, but this time in play. Not fear, and no one stops them. Bartle carves shells into his fence posts. Jorgus sings while hammering a new mast, completely off-key. And you? You sit by the cliffside, watching the tide roll in and out, letting the silence be what it is, full, not empty. You don't need to understand everything, because the sea isn't asking questions anymore. It's listening, and so are you. That night, you sleep soundly. No dreams, no visitors. Just breath, and the sound of waves kissing the rocks, again and again and again. So now, as you lie there, safe and warm, let it all soften. Let the edges blur. The sea's quiet tonight. The spirals have settled. The fog has lifted. And the doors, whether they were opened or only imagined, are closed again for now. You remember the boat gently drifting, the way the glow embraced without pulling, and the warmth of your hand resting next to a friend's. Maybe none of it was about answers. Maybe the sea just needed to share. And maybe you were the first person in centuries to listen. Breathe slowly now, in and out. The village is sleeping. The tide is calm. The shell is still. Everything you saw, everything you carried is now part of the water, and the water is part of you. The spirals will fade from the rocks eventually. The children will grow up and draw new ones, even if they don't know why. But you'll remember, quietly, deeply, without fear. So let yourself rest. Let the sea cradle you now. Just the hush of waves and the steady beat of memory. No voices, no shadows. Close your eyes. The door is shut. And you are home.